chords are chords built or derived out of a stack of fourths. This can include both perfect fourths or augmented fourths, but not diminished fourths, because diminished fourths are enharmonic to major thirds. The majority of harmony in music is built out of tertiary chords, which are chords built or derived out of a stack of thirds, like the ones displayed. While the thirds in a tertiary chord are consonant and often sweet, the fourths that make up quartal chords are slightly dissonant. They carry a very neutral, stark sound that can be described as cold, and the chords themselves often feel wider since the spaces between the fourths are greater than spaces between thirds. This leads to harmony completely made out of quartal chords sound quite alien almost, but at the same time it sounds quite modern and unique. Let's take another look at that intro I composed. The first chord is built out of 3 fourths stacked on each other. Note how I use some note doubling in different octaves in this chord. Just like in tertiary harmony, you can do this with quartal harmony too. The 10th in the chord label represents the highest extension. I'll go more in depth in this in the next video. The next chord is also 3 perfect fourths stacked on each other, now a half step lower. The bass quickly descends a half step down to B flat. This now creates a new quartal chord, which has a structure of 1 augmented fourth and 2 perfect fourths. I labeled this as a Lydian 10 quartal chord because all the notes in this quartal chord can be found in the B flat Lydian scale. I'll go more in depth in this chord labeling in another video. You should know that quartal chords don't have a standard way of being notated. The method I'm using I devised on my own, and I think is quite effective, so therefore I'm teaching it to you guys. The next chord in this example is built out of an augmented fourth and 2 perfect fourths, just like the chord before it. The last chord in this example is built out of an augmented fourth stacked on another augmented fourth with a perfect fourth and another perfect fourth on top of that. Note that since the augmented fourth bisects the octave, 2 augmented fourths stacked on each other create an octave. This means that you can create a secondary quartal structure on top of a bass structure consisting of 2 augmented fourths. Let's take another listen at this example. Moving on, let's talk about rearranging the notes in a quartal chord. A quartal chord doesn't have to be a stack of fourths. It just has to be able to be rearranged into a stack of fourths. There's a good chance you are already familiar with some of these rearrangements. The first of these is the sus4 chord. For example, the G sus4 chord contains all the notes in the D quartal chord, just rearranged in a different order. However, the interval of the fifth between G and D in this case is so strong that the quartal root is no longer felt as the root, and instead G is felt as the root. The second example is the sus2 chord. The C sus2 chord in this example has the quartal root of D. As you can see, it contains all the same notes as the D quartal chord. Similarly to how a G sus4 chord's root feels like G, the C sus2 chord's root feels like C, and it's for the same reason. The fifth interval solidifies C as a root, rather than its quartal root, which is D. Another reason why the bass notes of the sus2 and sus4 chords sound like the root to us is because of their relation to the tertiary chord. Our ears are accustomed to these notes between the perfect fifth resolving to the third of the chord, as happens in the majority of music. In these contexts, the suspended note is not really considered a chord tone, but rather an elaboration of the third. However, you can choose not to resolve these notes. And by doing this, these chords now function as standalone quartal chords. You can also rearrange the notes of bigger quartal chords to find new chords as well. However, that is for another video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next video.